Before freeways, suburbs, daily commutes, or road trips even existed, one man imagined a future where ordinary people, not just the wealthy, could travel anywhere, anytime. That idea would ignite a revolution and change human life forever. Ford believed the automobile should be simple, cheap, and built so fast that anyone could afford it. And through relentless experimentation, he created something the world had never seen: the moving assembly line. Overnight, he turned days of labor into minutes, and the Model T became the machine that put an entire nation on wheels. But behind the genius was a man full of contradictions. Ford was admired by millions and criticized by millions more. His vision transformed the industry, yet his beliefs sparked outrage. He raised wages and empowered workers, then fought labor unions with brutal force. He built an empire, but his ideas carried shadows that still spark debate today. This is the story of the man who drove the 20th century, reshaped civilization, and left behind a legacy as complex as the world he created. Henry Ford's story begins on a farm in Dearborn, Michigan, where he was born in 1863. Life on the Ford family farm was demanding, but young Henry was far more fascinated by the machines that eased labor than by farming itself. From an early age, he showed an intense curiosity for understanding how things worked. When he was just 12, his father gave him a pocket watch. Within days, Henry had taken it apart, examined every piece, and reassembled it perfectly. Soon, neighbors began bringing him their broken clocks and watches to fix, amazed at the boy's natural mechanical skill. Yet Ford was restless. He disliked the repetitive, exhausting work of farm life and longed for a world driven by machinery instead of muscle. At 16, he left home and walked miles to Detroit, determined to become an engineer. There, he found work as an apprentice machinist, learning to operate and repair steam engines, boilers, and industrial tools. These early jobs exposed him to the cutting edge of American industry when factories were rapidly expanding. Despite long hours and low wages, Ford spent his evenings studying engines and experimenting with new designs. His method was simple but powerful: observe, simplify, improve. These experiences, sharpened by raw curiosity and hands-on practice, laid the foundation for the innovations that would one day revolutionize transportation, manufacturing, and the world itself. By his late 20s, Henry Ford had risen from apprentice to chief engineer at the Edison Illuminating Company, one of the most exciting workplaces of the industrial age. It was here that Ford first encountered the electrifying mind of Thomas Edison, a man whose inventions had already reshaped modern life. Edison's relentless pursuit of innovation profoundly influenced Ford, reinforcing the belief that bold ideas, paired with practical engineering, could transform society. Ford's position at the Edison Company offered him something invaluable: stability during the day and freedom at night. Every spare hour he had, Ford poured into a private project that consumed his imagination. The idea was daring: a self-propelled vehicle powered by gasoline, something far more efficient than the cumbersome steam machines of the era. Working in a small shed behind his Detroit home, Ford spent years experimenting with engines, fuel mixtures, and lightweight frames. His neighbors often heard strange noises and saw sparks flying well into the night. Finally, in 1896, Ford completed his first working automobile, the quadricycle. It had 4 bicycle wheels, a light metal frame, and a 2-cylinder engine that roared to life with a pull of a cord. When Ford demonstrated the quadricycle, Edison himself reportedly encouraged him, saying, "Young man, that's the thing. You have it. Keep at it." That endorsement ignited Ford's confidence. From that moment, he knew his future would be built not in a factory, but on the open road ahead. Fresh from the success of his quadricycle, Henry Ford was eager to turn his invention into a business. Investors in Detroit took notice of his early achievements and, in 1899, helped him establish the Detroit Automobile Company, Ford's first attempt at mass-producing cars. On paper, it seemed like the perfect opportunity: strong financial backing, a growing interest in automobiles, and an ambitious young engineer at the helm. But reality quickly set in. The investors wanted immediate profits, urging Ford to build cars quickly and sell them at high prices. Ford, however, was obsessed with perfecting the machine, not rushing out expensive vehicles that only the wealthy could afford. The cars produced were too costly, too heavy, and didn't reflect Ford's vision of simplicity and efficiency. Production slowed, disagreements grew, and customers were unimpressed. By 1901, the company collapsed. For most people, this would have been a crushing defeat, but for Henry Ford, it became a turning point. He realized that technical brilliance alone wasn't enough. He needed a business model that matched his ideals. Affordability, reliability, and mass production would have to become the heart of his next venture. Ford left the failed company more determined than ever. He would soon return with a deeper understanding of engineering, leadership, and manufacturing, lessons that paved the way for one of the most significant industrial revolutions in history. After the collapse of the Detroit Automobile Company, Henry Ford regrouped with greater clarity and an even stronger conviction. Cars had to be affordable, durable, and simple to build. In 1903, backed by a small group of investors, including Detroit coal dealer Alexander Malcolmson, Ford founded the Ford Motor Company. What began in a modest rented workshop would soon become one of the most influential companies in human history. Ford's vision was unlike anything his competitors imagined. While early automakers focused on luxury vehicles for the wealthy, Ford believed the real opportunity lay in creating a dependable car for the average American. Every design choice, every tool, and every production method is centered around one guiding principle: efficiency. The company's first car, the Model A, sold quickly and proved that a practical, well-built automobile didn't need to be reserved for the elite. But Ford was far from satisfied. He continually pushed his team to simplify designs, reduce costs, and improve reliability. This relentless pursuit of refinement laid the foundation for a new way of thinking, where engineering and manufacturing worked together to produce high-quality machines at unprecedented speed. What started as a small workshop in 1903 soon became the heartbeat of American industry. The Ford Motor Company wasn't just building cars, it was creating a blueprint for the modern manufacturing world. In 1908, Henry Ford unveiled the machine that would define the 20th century, the Model T. It wasn't the fastest car, nor the most luxurious, but it was the first automobile truly built for everyone. Ford designed it to be durable enough for dirt roads, simple enough for any driver to maintain, and affordable enough for the average worker to buy. The Model T's steel chassis, flexible suspension, and rugged engine made it perfect for rural America, where roads were unpredictable and distances were vast. It started reliably in winter, climbed hills with ease, and could be repaired with basic tools. Ford liked to say you could learn to drive it in a day and fix it in an hour. But its true revolution came not just from engineering, but from philosophy. Ford believed mobility should be a right, not a privilege. As prices dropped, from $825 at launch to as low as $260, the Model T opened the door to a new era. Families could travel farther, farmers could reach markets, and people could live outside city centers while still working within them. By putting millions of Americans on the road, the Model T didn't just reshape transportation, it reshaped society itself. It changed where people lived, how they worked, and how they connected with the world, cementing Henry Ford's legacy as the man who truly put the world on wheels. Henry Ford's greatest innovation wasn't just the automobile, it was the method used to build it. By 1913, demand for the Model T was skyrocketing, but traditional manufacturing couldn't keep up. Ford needed a revolutionary approach that would cut production time, costs, and complexity. The answer came from observing continuous flow systems in meatpacking plants and Chicago warehouses, the moving assembly line. Ford broke car production into simple, repeatable tasks and arranged workers along a constantly moving conveyor. Each employee performed one specific job, mastering it with incredible speed and precision. This method slashed the time to build a Model T from 12 hours to just 93 minutes, an efficiency leap the world had never seen. Henry Ford understood something few industrialists of his time realized. A company could not thrive if its workers were exhausted, underpaid, and constantly leaving for better opportunities. Mass production required stability, precision, and loyalty. To achieve that, Ford introduced one of the most radical policies in American business history. In 1914, he shocked the world by announcing the $5 workday, more than doubling the typical factory wage. Newspapers called it madness, competitors called it socialism, but Ford called it innovative business. Higher pay reduced turnover, attracted skilled workers, and ensured that employees stayed focused and motivated on the assembly line. Most importantly, it made his own workers customers, people who could now afford to buy the Model T themselves. Ford paired higher wages with shorter hours, reducing the standard workday from 9 hours to 8. This not only improved morale, but also set a new national standard that other industries were forced to follow. In doing so, Ford helped shape the modern American workweek. Yet his reforms were not purely altruistic. Ford also imposed strict behavioral expectations on his employees through his sociological department, which monitored workers' personal lives in exchange for the higher wage. Despite this controversial oversight, the $5 day remains one of the most significant social and economic reforms in industrial history, transforming workers from laborers into participants in the emerging consumer economy. As the Model T conquered American roads, Henry Ford set his sights on something even larger: the world itself. Ford didn't just want to build cars. He tried to export an entire system of manufacturing, one that could reshape global industry. This system, later known as Fordism, combined mass production, standardized parts, efficient workflows, and stable wages into a model that could be replicated anywhere. By the 1920s, Ford was opening factories across Europe, Canada, South America, and Asia, bringing his assembly line techniques to countries eager to modernize. Plants in England, Germany, France, and Denmark soon rolled out the same cars built in Detroit, using identical tools and identical processes. For the first time, manufacturing became internationally standardized. A vehicle built in Manchester looked and functioned just like one built in Michigan. Ford's influence extended far beyond automobiles. Nations adopted Fordist ideas to restructure their industries, improve productivity, and strengthen their economies. Governments studied his methods to modernize agriculture, housing, and transport. Even political thinkers analyzed Fordism as a blueprint for managing industrial societies. This global expansion also transformed cultural life. As Ford cars appeared in distant towns and rural villages, people gained new mobility, new independence, and new economic opportunities. Henry Ford didn't just export vehicles, he exported a new way of working and living, one that helped define the industrial world of the 20th century. Despite his industrial brilliance, Henry Ford's legacy is also marked by deep controversy. In the 1920s, Ford became associated with the Dearborn Independent, a newspaper he owned that published openly anti-Semitic articles and conspiracy theories. These writings, later compiled as the International Jew, caused widespread condemnation. Though Ford eventually issued a public apology in 1927, the damage to his reputation was profound and lasting. His relationship with workers was equally complex. While Ford pioneered higher wages and shorter hours, he fiercely resisted labor unions. His factories became battlegrounds for control, with Ford's security forces, led by the notorious Harry Bennett, using intimidation and violence to break union activity. The most infamous incident occurred in 1937 at the Battle of the Overpass, where Ford agents brutally attacked United Auto Workers organizers outside the Rouge plant. Photographs of the assault shocked the nation and revealed the darker side of Ford's empire. Eventually, the pressure became too great, and in 1941, Ford Motor Company formally signed a contract with the UAW. These controversies remind us that Henry Ford was not simply an icon of innovation, but a complicated and often contradictory figure, one whose achievements reshaped the world, even as his personal beliefs and decisions cast long shadows over his legacy. When World War II erupted, the Ford Motor Company transformed from an automaker into one of the most powerful engines of the Allied war effort. Although Henry Ford himself initially held isolationist views, the realities of global conflict and the leadership of his son, Edison Ford, pulled the company into what President Franklin Roosevelt called the arsenal of democracy. Ford's factories shifted overnight from building cars to producing tanks, trucks, jeeps, engines, and aircraft at unprecedented speed. The most remarkable achievement was the Willow Run bomber plant, a massive complex designed to mass-produce the B-24 Liberator bomber. Applying Ford's assembly line principles to airplane manufacturing, a feat many thought impossible, Willow Run eventually produced a B-24 every 63 minutes, an industrial miracle unmatched by any other nation. Ford's wartime output didn't stop at aircraft. Thousands of military vehicles rolled out of Ford plants across the country, supplying Allied troops from North Africa to the Pacific. Mechanics praised Ford-built engines for their reliability under brutal conditions, and generals credited the company's efficiency in sustaining long campaigns far from home. Despite internal tensions and personal disagreements, Henry Ford's factories became an essential pillar of the Allied victory. The war cemented Ford's reputation not only as an industrial pioneer, but as a crucial contributor to one of the most decisive mobilizations in history. As the 1940s unfolded, Henry Ford, once the unstoppable force of American industry, began to slow. Years of relentless work, personal conflict, and the pressures of running a global empire took a toll on his health and decision-making. Following the death of his son, Edison Ford, in 1943, Henry briefly returned to the presidency of Ford Motor Company. But the world had changed, and the aging industrialist struggled to keep pace with modern management and wartime complexity. Behind the scenes, government officials and company executives grew increasingly concerned. Ford's health was deteriorating, his memory faltering, and his judgment inconsistent. It became clear that a new generation needed to take the wheel. In 1945, Henry Ford finally stepped aside, and leadership passed to his 28-year-old grandson, Henry Ford II, who immediately modernized the company, stabilized its finances, and restored its competitive strength. Henry Ford spent his final years in quiet retirement at Fair Lane, his Dearborn estate, surrounded by the farmland and machinery that had shaped his earliest fascinations. Henry Ford passed away on April 7, 1947, at the age of 83, at his Dearborn home, Fair Lane. News of his death spread across the world, marking the end of an era. Newspapers hailed him as a visionary who had transformed not only American industry, but modern life itself. Tens of thousands gathered to pay respects, recognizing that Ford's ideas had shaped their daily realities, from the cars they drove to the jobs they worked. Ford's legacy extended far beyond the Model T. His innovations in automation, division of labor, and mass production redefined manufacturing across every continent. Fordism became a global concept, taught in universities and adopted by nations seeking rapid industrial growth. His belief that ordinary people deserved access to modern technology helped create the very idea of the middle-class consumer, a foundational pillar of the 20th century economy. Yet his impact was not purely economic. By making personal mobility affordable, Ford changed how people lived, worked, traveled, and experienced the world. Highways, suburbs, commuting culture, and even road trips all owe part of their existence to his vision. Henry Ford left behind a complex but monumental legacy. He didn't just build a car. He built a new world, one where movement, opportunity, and innovation became accessible to millions. Though Henry Ford is forever linked to the automobile, his inventive spirit reached far beyond the open road. He believed that innovation should touch every corner of modern life, and he poured his imagination into a remarkable range of new industries. In aviation, Ford became a pioneer of commercial air travel. His company built the Ford Trimitar, nicknamed the Tin Goose, one of the earliest successful passenger aircraft that helped launch America's first airline routes. Ford was equally ambitious in agriculture, championing the use of mechanized farming equipment to replace backbreaking labor. He experimented with creating synthetic fuels from crops like soybeans, aiming to reduce America's dependence on oil long before alternative energy became a global concern. His laboratories produced everything from soybean-based plastics to new industrial materials, revealing a belief that the farm and the factory should work hand in hand. One of Ford's boldest and most controversial ventures was Fordlandia, a planned industrial city deep in the Amazon rainforest. Conceived as a rubber-producing utopia to supply his factories, the project struggled with disease, poor planning, and cultural clashes. Although ultimately unsuccessful, Fordlandia demonstrated Ford's willingness to tackle challenges on a global scale. These ventures reveal a man whose curiosity extended far beyond automobiles. Henry Ford sought not just to build cars, but to reinvent the future, from the skies to the farms and far-off frontiers. Long after his passing, Henry Ford's influence continues to be honored worldwide. The Henry Ford Museum of American Innovation in Dearborn stands as the most comprehensive tribute to his life, showcasing the Model T, early machinery, and countless artifacts from the dawn of modern industry. Nearby, Greenfield Village, Ford's ambitious open-air museum, preserves historic buildings, including Thomas Edison's Menlo Park Laboratory, reflecting Ford's passion for celebrating invention and craftsmanship. Numerous awards and institutions also carry his name. Engineering societies, business schools, and industrial foundations frequently recognize Ford's contributions to manufacturing, automation, and entrepreneurship. His legacy is visible in the countless streets, schools, and research centers named in his honor across the United States and beyond. In Wayne County and Detroit, historical markers commemorate the sites where Ford revolutionized transportation and established his early workshops. Globally, museums from Europe to South America feature exhibits on Fordism, the Model T, and the impact of mass production on modern society. These tributes ensure that Henry Ford is remembered not only as a carmaker, but as a visionary whose ideas reshaped technology, labor, and everyday life. Henry Ford's journey began on a quiet Michigan farm, yet his ideas would propel the world into the modern age. Through relentless experimentation, bold innovation, and an unshakable belief that technology should serve ordinary people, Ford transformed the automobile from a luxury curiosity into a force that reshaped daily life. Highways, suburbs, commuting, consumer culture. So much of what defines the 20th century can trace its roots back to his vision. But Ford's legacy is also one of contradictions. He championed high wages, yet battled unions, celebrated progress, yet held troubling beliefs. Even so, the impact of his work, mass production, affordability, efficiency, and global industrialization, remains undeniable. He didn't merely build cars. He built systems that changed how the world moved, worked, and lived. Today, his ideas echo in every assembly line, every affordable product, and every road stretching toward a horizon. If you enjoyed this documentary, please like, share, and subscribe to Real Life Legends for more stories of extraordinary innovators who shaped our world. And don't forget to click the end-screen video to watch our full documentary on Philo Farnsworth, the father of television. Your support helps us bring more legends to life.